destructive force of Haiti.
Of entrusted power to private gain.
Welcome to Voice of the People. Here in VOP, we help unite people of all kinds, providing reliable information with high-quality editing, covering controversies, bringing injustices to light, and talking about the wonderful history of this world in the process.
Everyone is free to submit their stories and listen into the moments and happenings we capture here in VOP. So come in and be one of the AC's advocates for change.
I'll lead today's topic, yours truly, Angela Matlangihan, and with me is...
Alona Vispo, ready to delve into today's topic.
Today, we'll talk about an extremely sensitive, important, yet necessary topic, the effects of imperialism. But before we dwell on that serious topic, how did we even reach imperialism? Well, let's have our expert, Zywin Lamano, explain our campaign poster.
Thank you for having me. The campaign poster depicts an image of an island surrounded by cascading and raw waves, slowly enveloping it, including all the locals living there. Additionally, we also have a ginormous galleon ship overshadowing the island, a reference to how imperialists usually overpower smaller countries. Through the sheer power, furthermore, we can also observe the shadows or the history of the island, buried beneath the sun, showing how history is all in the past but will never forgotten. There are also depictions and images of oppression, suffering, inequality, colonialism, slavery, and much more. We can see the scared look painted on the people living on the island, personified as common normal people after imagining the fate that their ancestors had to endure and things that may have to deal with in the future. This makes it essential for all us to make a stand against foreign influences, or at least limit ourselves to an extent, as imperialism was the main cause for some systematic problems. Our indigenous and culture-driven ancestors were the first to witness the negative effects of our imperialism firsthand, and we may very well be repeating history just in a different, more modern setting.
Imperialism has been around since ancient times. The strong oppress the weak, while the weak are at the mercy of the strong. This has just been the way of life. Unfortunately, that rule extends to pre-industrial revolution and pre-modern times, with the needs for spices, raw materials, and trade routes being the main catalyst.
The first age of imperialism happened around the 1500s up to the 1700s, and the second age of imperialism occurred during the 1900s until the early 2000s.
But enough of that history lesson. What even is imperialism?
Well, imperialism can come in the form of colonialism, protectorate, concession, and sphere of influence, and is present today in society. As mentioned in Britannica, imperialism is also the advocacy of extending power and dominion over a place. Imperialism has caused a net positive in the world, mainly revolutionizing several aspects of our lives and causing a boom for technology and the economy.
Not to disregard all that, but some of their action have caused great suffering to the people living in the same country that was plundered and targeted for its resources, which was necessary for the Industrial Revolution. Of course, this comes at the expense of the tribes, communities, and developing cities forming a home here. And it's because of imperialism that so many lives were sacrificed. Imagine the heartache of the family struggling to get through another day because of the effect of imperialism.
But just because imperialism did some good, that does not mean that this is an acceptable part of life, as it creates massive injustices and inequalities. This, naturally, paves the road for inequality and injustice between genders, social classes, race or ethnicity, and financial capability. Additionally, according to OHCHR.org, colonialism and imperialism have harmed indigenous people, resulting in systematic racism, oppression, poverty, economic inequality, violence, poor healthcare, loss of language and culture, and the violation of basic human rights. Research says that due to poor healthcare, indigenous people are more likely to contract diseases, which is why we have to hack away and minimize its negative impact.
Even more so, as non-profit organization Cultural Survival tell us, many of the people were forced from their land in lowland areas and into upland regions, limiting their agricultural production and economic security.
These are just a few recent developments in society, and it doesn't take much to find the effects of imperialists on the countries they occupied. Nevertheless, racism rages in society, as many people are shunned from society and branded with negative stereotypes, especially those of color and those beneath other races.
Of course, these races are not given the same opportunities as normal people and are faced with the harsh realities and
Poverty.
Based on the research conducted by HIR or Harvard International Review, every 2 weeks, an indigenous language dies. These are just some of the many things that happens around us, but especially affect indigenous people.
Yet, they are not the only group or community harmed, as blacks, Mexicans, or people of color are targeted for their skin color and subjected to racism and the prejudices of this world. Although imperialism is the root cause of all the mentioned problems, there is nothing we can do to fully stop the effect caused by imperialism and the lasting impact imperialists leave.
How much longer will we have to live in society where racism is widespread and idolized?
How much longer must we have to tolerate the injustices of this society?
We need to make changes now and upturn our beliefs and behaviors for the better good before it's too late.
That's the goal of VOP, Voice of the People. Raising valuable questions, advocating for the peace and unity of society, and changing norms, prejudices, and traditions in the process. But there are some ways we can prevent or at least create a temporary solution to the effects of imperialism.
For systematic racism, we can create community programs and workshops to foster teamwork and trust, promoting inclusivity, and for poverty alleviation. We can create mini homeless shelters, just enough for a family or two to live for a short while, and small job opportunities.
On the other hand, for economic inequality, we can provide free online courses and better education to balance the scales and implement better security measures, weapons regulation, and programs for minors to minimize criminal behavior. We can even apply mobile clinics and government-funded medical kits to solve poor healthcare and to safeguard and preserve the language and culture of indigenous people by creating language programs and digital archives.
Lastly, to prevent violence, there can be legal aid from the government and protection for those reporting abuse, while having free treatment and therapy for the victims.
There are only 2 ways we can resolve these systematic failures of our society, through reformation or revolution. The government and the people need to work together for the greater good. We need to solve this problem before it gets worse through peaceful means or minimal violence.
People are suffering because of the unequal power dynamics, causing instability and poverty, while people like Andres Bonifacio and Jose Rizal are silenced due to their opposition to imperialism.
We have to stand up for our rights. We need to be the people promoting change. We have to make the move now and create an environment for future generations to flourish in.
And that concludes our statements regarding the serious matter that we discussed, the effects of imperialism. To recap, we talk about the negative effects of imperialism, how that impacts us even in modern times, and suggested solution that the problems rooted in the patriarchy of this world.
May we carry the lessons and suggestions that we discussed in this highly informative video for years to come. We need to remember to be fair and open-minded in our judgment and accept others as if they are our family.
Always keep in mind that
Through one step, one person, and one movement, we can create a bigger impact than all of us can imagine.